Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. I'm so excited you're here with us today because we're looking at something genuinely incredible. We are diving deep into the mind, the art, and the strategy of a guy who literally transformed dirt and grass into pure strategic joy. We're talking about the legendary Alister MacKenzie. If you've ever stood on a golf course and thought, wow, this looks like it was painted onto the earth, not built on it, you've probably felt his influence. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how this brilliant artist managed to weave together raw nature, breathtaking beauty, and rigorous strategy into these massive global masterpieces.
Okay, let's dive straight into this. Mackenzie had this famous saying, a golf course should test the finest player while giving the average golfer a day of unforgettable enjoyment. Now, that isn't just some nice PR slogan, that is his absolute core philosophy. It's literally the heartbeat of every single design choice he ever made. And think about how incredibly tough that balance is to actually pull off, right? He didn't want to just beat you up out there, but he also didn't want to bore the elite scratch player. He wanted to create a space where the absolute champion and the casual weekend player could both walk off the 18th green thinking, man, that was an unforgettable day of fun.
So how exactly did he pull that off? Well, here is our architect's scorecard for today. First, we'll look at Mackenzie as an architect without borders. Then we'll check out the global masterpieces. Third, the fascinating strategy of width. Fourth, bunkers as natural art. And finally, designing golf for joy.
All right, kicking things off with section 1, an architect without borders.
You see, what really set Mackenzie apart from his peers is that he wasn't boxed in by borders or soil types or even climates. Whenever a landscape invited great golf, he went, and he let the land itself act as the primary artist. He wasn't out there forcing his will onto the earth. He was just helping reveal its natural potential. Now, as we get ready to look at his specific courses, I want you to keep this mental checklist of his architectural hallmarks right at the front of your mind. You are going to see these repeated everywhere he went. We're talking natural-looking bunkers that look like they've been there for centuries, strategic width that gives you choices, multiple routes to success on a single hole, really clever visual deception that makes you second-guess yourself, walkable routing so the whole round just flows perfectly, and above all else, immense beauty that never sacrifices the strategic challenge. And his global footprint is the ultimate proof of this lack of borders. I mean, his work spans 3 continents. You've got the rolling hills of Georgia at Augusta National, the dramatic, crashing coastline of California at Cypress Point, the firm, sandy soils of Australia down at Royal Melbourne, and the ancient dunes of Ireland at Lahinch. His philosophy wasn't just some regional trick that only worked in one type of weather. His theories on art and strategy worked absolutely anywhere in the world.
Let's move on and see how this builds in section 2, the global masterpieces.
Now that we've got a handle on his homeworks, let's look at the actual courses that validate these legendary theories. What's super interesting here is the incredible contrast between 2 of his most famous creations. Take Augusta National. That course represents perfection through refinement. It was a legendary collaboration with Bobby Jones, where they basically transformed an old indigo plantation in Georgia into this total masterpiece of wide fairways and perfectly positioned bunkers that just beg you to make bold decisions. But then contrast that refined look with Cypress Point. This is perfection through pure imagination. Out on the Monterey Peninsula, Mackenzie didn't force the golf course onto the coastline. No, he just let it emerge naturally right there among the towering Monterey cypress trees, the rocky cliffs, and the white sand dunes along the Pacific Ocean. So you have 2 completely different landscapes, 2 totally different approaches, but both result in absolute perfection.
But, his genius wasn't only found on ocean cliffs or in Georgia. Let's look at Pasatiempo in California, which actually became his beloved home course. He literally lived right next to the fairways. And the magnificent Crystal Downs up above Lake Michigan. At these spots, he demonstrated something entirely different: extraordinary restraint. At these courses, the land already had this magnificent, dramatic movement. So instead of bringing in heavy equipment to reshape it, he just embraced every single natural ridge, every valley, every hillside. The greens just seemed to organically pop out of the terrain. These courses really prove that sometimes the absolute best architecture feels discovered, not manufactured.
That brings us to section 3, the strategy of width. Let's shift gears for a second to talk about what is arguably his most misunderstood concept. And this might totally challenge how you think about playing the game. Let me ask you this. Does a wide fairway make golf easier? Your gut instinct is probably screaming, yes, obviously, there's way more room to miss. And hey, critics of Mackenzie back in the day assumed the exact same thing. They thought generous fairways dumbed down the challenge. But Mackenzie? He believed the exact opposite. Let's actually walk through his logical breakdown here because it explains why a generous fairway actually demands way more of a golfer's brainpower. It goes like this. Step 1, width creates options. You aren't just forced to hit your ball straight down some narrow bowling alley. Step 2, options create decisions. Now you actually have to think about your lie and your angle. And step 3, decisions create strategy. This is where it gets so brilliant. By giving you all this room, MacKenzie basically says that the golfer who bravely hugs a dangerous bunker off the tee is going to be rewarded with the absolute perfect angle into the green. Meanwhile, the cautious player who bails out into the wide, safe side of the fairway, well, they're going to face a much, much harder approach shot over hazard. He never dictates how you play. He just invites you to make a choice. And honestly, there is no better proof of this concept than the West Course at Royal Melbourne in Australia, which he designed alongside Alex Russell. It is this amazing playground of firm, sandy soils and rolling terrain that is perfectly suited for wide, strategic play. The fairways out there are wonderfully generous, but that width actually demands highly aggressive lines if you want to score well. The greens only reward the proper angles of approach. It's the ultimate testament that width creates strategy, which is a fact we see proven time and time again when the world's finest players get totally stumped by its brilliance during the President's Cup. Moving right along to Section 4. Bunkers as natural art. Now, MacKenzie didn't just dig a bunch of holes in the ground and dump sand in them. He disguised his traps. He turned them into these sweeping landscapes that look like they were carved out by centuries of wind, rather than by a construction crew. We're talking irregular edges, beautiful flowing lines, natural forms, and crucially, precise strategic position. So the really crucial point is this. For MacKenzie, beauty never replaced purpose. You don't just make a bunker look wild and beautiful just for the sake of it, right? Instead, the artistic purpose actually enhanced the beauty. These bunkers occupy exact tactical positions to mess with your depth perception or to tempt you into a risky shot, all while looking like a stunning, totally natural part of the earth. And speaking of respecting the natural landscape, consider his work at Lahinch Golf Club over in Ireland. MacKenzie had this deep, deep admiration for traditional links golf. When he was brought in to work on Lahinch, he didn't bring in heavy machinery to flatten out the ancient links. He practiced the brilliant art of knowing what not to change. He preserved the massive natural dunes. He kept the adventurous, quirky blind shots that define the historical round. He basically proved that great architecture often requires stepping back and letting the wind-shaped history of the land speak for itself. And today, it stands as one of golf's absolute finest examples of thoughtful restoration. And that brings us to our final stop today, Section 5, Designing Golf for Joy. At the end of the day, past all the clever strategic widths and the beautiful bunkering, MacKenzie had one ultimate overarching goal for every single person who stepped onto his courses. He wanted you to experience the game as both a competition and an adventure. Look, it's really easy for architects to just make a course punishingly hard, but difficulty alone, that never interested Alister MacKenzie. His greatest gift was emotional. He genuinely believed that players should admire the scenery around them. You should laugh with your buddies when your ball rolls off a wild sloping green. You should have to think creatively to escape trouble. And most importantly, you should finish your round eager to return and do it all over again. That's exactly why his courses are still so beloved by golfers of absolutely every ability. As we wrap up this explainer on a man who truly sits among the immortals of golf design, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. How does beauty remain golf's greatest strategic tool? Really think about that the next time you play. How does a breathtaking view or a beautifully carved bunker actually distract you, tempt you, or invite you right into a strategic trap? MacKenzie proved once and for all that beauty and strategy are never separate. Each one strengthens the other. We're going to explore exactly how modern architects are still trying to capture this magic in Part 3, but until then, keep that question in mind. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.